Hello and welcome back, everyone. It is Suzanne Worthley with my co-host Kim Hess. Hey there,
Hello,
Kim.
everybody.
How
Hi.
are ya?
Oh
Good.
gosh, I'm loving this weather for
I
like a
know,
change.
right? We're so excited. We're
Yeah.
so far apart from each other in the cities that it's really fun to compare notes on that. But yeah, beautiful sunshine in Minnesota finally. Yay!
Yay.
We are back with another Energy Unleashed podcast episode. These are sessions where we talk about my client work. I actually ask my clients if I can use some of the information or the experiences that they have when they come in to see me as an energy practitioner. And then I like to share it with everyone online because we can all learn from one another. And then we pull Kim in to help unleash it or dig deeper or really expand on it. And I'm excited to do this one today because this one, Kim, has been coming up a lot lately, and it is on the subject of gaslighting. And we've been hearing haven't you heard that word thrown around a lot
I've heard it
lately?
a lot. It's in TV shows, it's on social media. I've heard people say it in conversation, and it's like, where did
Yep.
that come from? Like
All of
all
a
of a
sudden, it's
sudden,
just
it's a
like
big deal.
it's a hot button in the last year and a half. And funny enough, I will be perfectly honest, I did not know what gaslighting technically was or what it really was about until I started to write my new book, that Confident Empath book. Really, I go into gaslighting a little bit because the reason I'm bringing it up here is it is technically an energetic situation. And that's what I want to bring up today. So my clients, I had two of them, but I'll kind of bundle it together. Basically, when I get people in my office that are having marriage troubles, which is very common these days, not just marriage troubles, but relationship troubles, period. And these people are typically, and I'm not going to say that the male is always the gaslighter and the female isn't, et cetera, because it changes.
Mhm.
It isn't having to do with the sex of the person, but in this particular case, two of them, they were the wives that were being gaslighted by the spouses. And one of them was really struggling. She had been married quite some time with three children and young kids. And her husband was very overpowering and technically gaslighting. And we'll get into that in a second on what that feels like. But she was so beaten down in this particular session. And it was a new person for me, and I would ask her questions, and almost every single solitary answer was, I don't know. I don't know. How do you feel about this? Or what does this do to your body? I don't know. I don't know. And I find sometimes when these people have gone through large amounts of long-term abuse in terms of energy, they go so much inside of themselves that they really truly honestly think that they don't know, that they don't know how to attach to anything. And this particular gal was really struggling, had kicked the husband out a couple of times, let him back in, kicked him out again, let him back in. And it was very difficult on her. Now, these situations inherently, they progress into imbalanced codependent behavior. Because we're getting gaslighted doesn't put all of the blame on the gaslighter, the gaslightee, I would call it, or the receiver. Also is very codependent in the relationship energy exchange because it's addictive. And basically, the reason why I'm bringing it up is this is an empath thing. And I'm doing a lot more on empathing with Kim this year because of the new book. And this is important for us to understand that this is an energy vampire tactic. It fulfills the personal narrative of non-self-worth on both sides of the coin. And we're going to break that down a little bit when Kim jumps in here. So these are things that you kind of feel like about yourself if you are being gaslighted. You no longer feel like the person that you used to be. You are more anxious and less confident than you used to be. You are often wondering if you are being too sensitive, feeling like everything you do is wrong. And this is a biggie. Always thinking that it is your fault, apologizing often, having a sense that something is wrong, but being unable to identify what exactly that is, and often questioning whether your response to your partner is appropriate. Am I doing things right? Am I not doing enough? Is it about me? And we start to really break down the self-worth, and then making excuses for that partner's behavior, avoiding giving information to friends and family to avoid confrontations of your partner and or from anyone else. This is huge. Feeling isolated from friends and family, finding it increasingly hard to make decisions, hence the I don't know with this gal, and feeling hopeless and taking little or no pleasure in activities or just daily life. So those are quite a list, right, Kim?
It's huge. It is really, really big. I
It's sad.
right, and God, I wish I could remember the name of the movie. It just reminds me of a movie that, yeah, that everything you described was this character in this movie that was you thought it was over the top when you're watching it, but it isn't. It
No.
happens. It really
Yeah.
happens.
And the danger in this is the person that is gaslighting, in this case, the husband, was overpowering the field of the wife. And this overpowering is what is important for us to understand is an energetic transfer. Her field, her auric field, holding her gasoline and her life force, is weak and torn because she is not taking self-responsibility and understanding who she is and what she stands for.
Mhm.
So we need to, in my opinion, take self-responsibility first and say, hey, it is up to me to feel good about myself, not have someone outside of myself validate me. Because if I wait for someone to validate me outside of myself, they can also harm me outside of myself because I allow both. And so the real responsibility, this is why it's a codependent addictive behavior. So now I have a weak field, and then the gaslighter comes home and I've already got nothing. And they jump into my field in a violent, usually way, with words and or even sometimes actions. And they twist and manipulate so that by the time the conversation is done, the person who is being gaslighted thinks it's their fault, truly believes it's their fault. So the self-worth then is just validating, I have no worth. I have no worth. I am nothing, especially now. I am nothing without this other person. And this particular energy part of the exchange is exactly why they let them back in again and again, because they actually think that person is supporting them. It's so twisted.
Do you think so when people get into a relationship with someone like that? I mean, I guess sometimes you don't know immediately because they might not be showing their true self, but
Yep.
that they already are in a kind of vulnerable place with them and their self-worth and fear and all of the things, you know?
Most definitely, because for example, if I have a gaslighting husband or wife and I leave that partner and I don't heal myself, I
Mhm.
literally will step into another resonance in a relationship of the same frequency. I am going to have that bat signal go out and say, I still need somebody to fix me, which then is going to harm in the long run my own field. So this is coming from both ends of this. The
So
gaslighter also, right?
right, yeah. So when you're saying this, what came to mind for me is your karmic lesson, or maybe you signed up for this lesson with this type of person, and until you learn to, own it yourself and understand what your needs are, but also put your boundaries up and know what's yours and what's not, that until you learn that, you're going to keep repeating that lesson.
Yes. Over and over and over. And now remember, vampiring doesn't necessarily just be a actual romantic or maternal partner.
No.
It can be a work person. It can be family members. We can get
Yes.
gaslighted by anybody and everything. We can even, in some instances, feel gaslighted in a social way, right? I mean, we can fall for everything pressuring us because it's us that doesn't have the field. So let's flip this around for a second, too, because the gaslighter, the one that is doing the gaslighting, actually also is really struggling with self-worth because they are the one that is projecting and stealing and vampiring the energy.
Mhm.
And the reason why we say vampire, if someone isn't following how we talk about
Yes, and
empathing,
that's a real vampire.
right? It feels like a real vampire because it's a bite,
Yes.
right? And then they
Yeah.
have to go and they take another bite out of something or someone else over and over again because ultimately, when we steal someone's energy, it technically doesn't have the resonance of our truth and our own alignment. And I'll burn through it quickly like a Red Bull. I'll get a hit. I'll feel good. If I overpower somebody or I'm nasty and I control somebody, my ego gets that sucking hit. Like I suck it out of that person. And I think I'm awesome and fabulous. But the truth of a human, we do not hold within our heart space cruelty. And so it doesn't ever resonate. So it's going to leave and try to find something else. But then that vampire who is ignorant and unaware will go and suck something else and someone else over and over and over again, whether it is land, building, spaces, or people. We will continually choose to take that in just like a vampire sucks the blood out of someone. So it's a very dangerous situation. So the one that is doing the gaslighting is taking because they also do not know how to hold their own frequency of their truth. They have not felt good about themselves, and so they are going outside of that for their validation.
What do you think? I think of an extreme narcissist, basically. Do they even have, obviously they would have to figure this out, but maybe it's not obvious. Do they really even have the conscious ability to be, empathize with someone after,
Right.
say you do this, you do the gaslighting, you throw it all at them and you feel so good for that short high, but then what after that? Do they really consciously even feel bad about?
You brought up the great word, because this is the other word that I have noticed rampant in my business is the word narcissist.
Mhm.
And so, a lot of people are now using the word empath. And that's why I'm so glad that my new book came out at the time when everyone really doesn't get what they're talking about. They use it very flippantly, and they use it in a way that, oh, I'm an empath. And that's great if you know what you're doing. Right. So I'm pleased that my information is coming out in a timely fashion, because the word empath has become very, I don't know, kitschy right now. Right. But on the heels of that, so is gaslighting and so is narcissism. I have never heard so many people in the last 2 years of my business. And it's really weird because it kind of really went up since COVID. He's a narcissist. She's a narcissist. My mom's a narcissist. Everybody's a narcissist. And I think this is another word where people kind of just, throw it out there. And yet, what does that really mean in terms of energy? Right. So narcissism, yes, it's that one who has this inflated self of ego. It's that one that thinks of themselves first, only service to self in a really negative way, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you really touched on something. The true narcissist does not potentially have the capability in their actual kind of like setup of their fields to understand and be capable of true empathy, not empathic, empathy, meaning a true narcissist, the technical version of it would be someone that doesn't have the capacity to stand in someone else's shoes. Not just they don't give a crap about somebody else's shoes. And I think so many people are using it flippantly, like, oh, my mom's a narcissist because she doesn't care. She may just be selfish and out of whack with her ego, or she may indeed be a narcissist. So oftentimes, however, the narcissist is also the gaslighter. So these all weave together.
That's so interesting, because all of those words have been, I just had examples this week talking to a friend that I haven't talked to for a long time, that her daughter left her husband, and it was because he's a narcissist. And then on social media, not long after that, somebody was talking about narcissism, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, it just popping up. Yeah.
It's becoming that almost like, and we do this with words and labels. This is what we do. We do this. We will put a label out there and we'll glom onto it. This is why, again, the empath information is so critical, because people glom onto empath and they think it's an awesome and great thing, which indeed it can be if we're skilled and we're doing it in an energetically protective way. But when we glom onto these words and we use them without really understanding what is happening in terms of the energy transference, why is it happening, and how does that relate to the belief system that is underneath there, we don't get anywhere with this stuff. We just say, he's a narcissist. And if I understand that this is actually literally coming out of a belief system that is distorted, it is a self-belief. I can then work with my partner, if I choose to, in a different way to understand compassion for him or her. It doesn't mean that I don't possibly leave a toxic relationship, but I can find forgiveness and compassion for letting myself off the hook as well. I don't necessarily need to forgive bad actions, bad words, etc., but the forgiveness comes here within.
And forgiveness is one of the most important healing things that you can do for any situation.
Yeah.
But
just, when it comes to true gaslighting, I think sometimes it is really critical. We are never going to change the energy of another. We are never, ever going to change a vampire, because this is their MO. This is how their body works. If the vampire chooses on their own to do their own spiritual work and come through that on the other end, they can indeed do their own self-healing, but we do not have that enough power to do that. So this is all about boundaries. And so whoever is living with the gaslighter or the narcissist or the vampire, etc., the most critical thing we need to understand is they have no boundary.
Mhm.
So we need to find our boundary and to really ramp up that boundary when we choose to, because this is what's going to save the human from being confused on what's happening energetically, mentally, and physically, and more so emotionally. It's
Oh,
the emotional roller coaster ride. And
huge.
oh my gosh, when it's a gaslighter, that never stops because it's a mind screw that is continually triggering that emotional reaction, and we never get to neutral. So what I was telling this gal is to so please consider taking care of your auric field more so that you can get the process of discernment into your daily life, and then find neutral every time so that when something is thrown at me gaslighting wise, I can go to neutral first and go, wait a minute, A, that isn't even mine. B, that doesn't even resonate with me. C, that is not my true feeling inside, so I don't need to own that. So there are steps to this that I break out in that book that are very tactical, that can really, really completely change the way that you live with someone like that, and or indicate to you that this is indeed so toxic, I choose to go.
Yeah, have you ever had a client that went from total narcissist vampire and then gone through the healing process to come out the other side?
Most of the time, the narcissist vampire is not in here because they don't think
Yeah.
that
They don't need
that they're
healing.
doing anything.
I wonder.
However, I have very many that are dealing with those kinds of people, and I have seen profound changes because it's all about boundaries. I have had people who have narcissistic mothers, mother-in-laws, whatever, work partners, partners, and I have seen massive amounts of change in those people to say, no, this boundary is clear. I mean, to the extent of like where people leave and like maybe even move to it. Not because you're running from your problem, but moving because you actually need the space to stay away from the field that robs you.
Oh my
So
God.
until they get better, right?
I have a lot of, gosh, it just is amazing that people are taking the steps to do that because it's not
Yeah.
easy, especially
And
if you've had this going on for most of your life.
I was going to say, Andy, you just hit what I was going to say. We're jamming on the telepathy here. It is absolutely is when it's codependent addictive behavior that this has been my normal. This darling little thing had no idea that this really wasn't her normal. And the amazing difference just in one session. And I'm not saying, I'm so fabulous in the session. It's her. She did the work. She started to actually answer the questions at the end of the sentences with what she really knew instead of answer with, I don't know, by the end of our chat. It was amazing because I kept saying, no, use your body. You do know. You know this answer. Go inside and try your best to find that answer because it is within you. And this is so important because we think the answer is outside of us because that person tells us that.
Oh yeah. And you know what? This isn't just in a personal relationship like that. It's in the workplace.
Oh, yeah.
I had a boss at one point that it was horrible because he would work to break me down, and he found the spots that were sensitive for me,
Yeah.
and to realize that looking back, I get it. During that time, it was hard. It was really
Yeah.
difficult to go through that
So
situation.
how did you deal with him?
I took a job at a different part of the company to start with.
Okay.
And then he figured out a way to eliminate my job, and here I am.
Wow. So in other words, he was a gift for you.
It was a gift. It was a total gift. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. But
Yeah,
how
because they're bulldogs, man. They won't give up, right?
no, not at all. And a total manipulator, just
Yeah.
and horrible to people. I just don't have room for
Well,
that.
and think about this particular client again. She was saying, I said, do you have potentials of leaving fully because you kicked him out, but can you make it on your own? And she said, I don't know. Of course, I don't know. She was still at that point. And it's because he would throw things at her that tells her she can't make it on her own.
Right.
Constantly telling her there's no way there's no way you're going to do this. And when we get beaten down so bad by someone else's words like that, words are weapons. And when we get beaten down with that for so long, it becomes the actual truth, or we are consistently and constantly second guessing our own head. I think I can do this, but maybe I can't. And so therefore we stay stagnant.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that kind of loop in your head can be even
Yeah.
if you're not in a relationship like this. So to amplify that, I can't imagine what that feels like constantly having those words thrown at you and then running them through your head all the time.
And the sad part about the addiction on this one is it really brings up really crazy, it's almost like more energy cords. It brings up energy cords of drama. It
Oh,
brings up most all gaslighting situations and or vampiring in a codependent way are dramatic, because what happens is I'm going through in and throughout your fields. Just think about it. We've got, a physical field, an emotional field, a mental field, a spiritual field, and all of those are being attacked. And it's going in because all of a sudden my head is being manipulated. Now you're in my mental field. My head is being manipulated, but then, oh my goodness, it manipulates down into my emotional field and it weaves into that. And now my stomach is starting to get sick. So it's in my physical field. And then my spirit is broken and it's in my other fields. And so we are the cords that come between these codependent relationships are just insane. And this is why it is so difficult to leave them, because if I even start to get my stuff together in a mental way, my emotional way might still be corded. Or if I'm corded, releasing cords in emotional, my physical might be, and on it goes. And so this is really deep healing work to get out of these toxic relationships long term. What will happen with a gaslighter also is they will sneak in really crazy ways, especially these days, like texting. So they will text these massive, you this, you this, you this things. And then that person who is being so abused will keep that stuff because it will just continue in another way to cord them to that storyline. And so their stories start to really become that other person's version of themselves.
yeah. And I think it can go so much, when you said it goes really deep. I mean, deep.
Mm-hmm.
This could be childhood fear, insecurities,
Oh,
confidence
yeah.
issues, poverty, fear, whatever, poverty consciousness. It could be any of that brought you to that relationship to start with. So when you think
Yep.
about the layers, that in the healing that will take place, it's a lot of work, but boy, is it worth it at the end.
And let's go back to your boss. You said he basically still, even though you left his department, followed you through that process in some ways to still get to you, to still attack, right?
Mhm.
This is when we're starting to really see the narcissist again, because we can have a gaslighter that doesn't necessarily have full true narcissism that can heal quicker, versus the one that is fully narcissistic will not even have a capacity to start to understand a ramification or a cause and effect out of their actions. And so that's why the word narcissist is really, it's important for us to understand the truth of that matter, is that they truly may not be capable because of whatever is so imbalanced. Now, does that mean a narcissist can't heal? Absolutely not, because we still can redo our DNA, our instruction set with the work that we choose to do. We can still always reprogram ourselves in belief systems. And so I believe, and maybe I would be, shut down by someone in the so-called medical field on this, but I believe that energetically and healing wise, even a full, actual, literal, technical, whatever words you want to say, narcissists can still heal if they choose to fully.
Right.
So, but it's going to be, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal because
Yeah.
it's not just turning into a narcissist. This is a long time of practicing that
Yeah.
being that behavior, whether it was
And
taught wherever or just survival,
and look at what we live in a bigger way, in our politics. Look at the narcissism in our entertainment world, in our, the media, in everything. Everything is me, self-serve in so many ways. And yet we're being told I'm serving you, so this is confusing for us because we do already have some semi-programming as a human in the bigger world of, well, you're saying one thing, but you're showing me another thing. Your actually words are saying something that are really hurting me, or your words are saying something that's giving me hope, and then you destroy it. So we are being manipulated on so many levels of gaslighting that it is, really, and I think this quite possibly is one of the reasons why it came forward since the last 2 to 3 years, because in the last 2 to 3 years, there's been a lot of what we would call social gaslighting. And so, it's
But even think
difficult.
about COVID, when you're stuck at home, you're not at your daily job, the kids are home, all the things, you're home with your
Yep.
husband for the most time that you've ever been with them, or your wife, or,
Yep.
partner. And you didn't even, I mean, it becomes toxic at that point because you're constantly together.
Yes.
So I'm sure it just builds up, builds up, builds up, where you just can't really take it anymore.
Isolation is part of the gaslighting technique anyway. And so when we start to isolate, we're even more vulnerable to the tactic. And
Mhm.
so these all are related. So yeah, this is a really, really big deal. So in rounding it down a little bit, what I would like to just say is what I work with this client on is it is your responsibility, first and foremost, to dig deep if you choose when you're ready to go into your belief systems to say, I am valid. It will always, always attack the three things that I talk about almost every single time we talk on anything, which is I'm safe, I have self-worth and love, and I am enough. When we find that trinity within us and we start to work our own empathic skills differently, then it is important for us to understand I'm making the effort to set that boundary. I am the one that is putting up the boundary, and I'm going to be diligent because I'm making this choice. So those are the first and foremost things, is to start to work on that stuff. And then obviously cutting cords, constantly cutting cords, making the efforts to do that. We can do that, by a chop motion or a prayer or a burn or anything. And then ultimately it is important for us to find our feel centers. When I was with this gal, what happens to the gaslight E, the one that has been so abused, is we shut down our feel centers.
Mhm.
We don't allow ourselves to feel, hence the I don't know response. So we don't let ourselves feel anything because that feels even more scary. And the truth of the matter is when you actually reactivate your feel centers and you own your individualized feels, when someone jars me with something, I can then go to neutral and I can check, you know what? That doesn't even resonate with my feel center. That is so not even mine. And this is the beginning of the healing process, is when we can toss that out. So there are really valid steps. And like I said, I outlined tons of this in Confident Empath book, because that book also talks about multidimensional planes. And again, we can get all of this empath stuff, not just from people. I can get beat up by the paranormal, for God's sakes. I had another gal in here just the other day who was having all kinds of crazy paranormal stuff in her house, and she is almost getting beat up like a gaslighter, but it's a ghost. And I mean, she's
Oh
really
my
having a hard time
gosh.
because she is constantly scared and constantly doesn't want to be at home and constantly doesn't know what to do and is isolating, and the whole 9 yards is happening to her, but it's paranormal. So when I wrote that book to talk about multiple planes of existence, this is important for us to understand. It might not even be your partner, it might be a ghost. I mean, that's crazy, but it's real.
That's such an interesting story. I've never heard, I guess I never
Yeah.
thought of it in that perspective.
Right.
Should have. I mean, we were just at the Palmer House, for crying out loud. I'm sure there were instances. Raymond
Right.
would be a good
Right.
example.
Right. Abuse of paranormal energies. Right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
again, an abuse of paranormal energy coming at me is the same exact thing. It's because I'm not strong in my field.
Mhm.
So it's all the same stuff, just different sandboxes, is how I always say it.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Anything else to round down on?
No, I think this was a really great conversation because the words are definitely flying around out there. And I,
Right.
for one, really didn't understand gaslighting that much until not too long ago. So I think it's a great conversation. So I hope everybody
Great.
enjoyed it.
All right. And if anybody is out there listening, please, on our behalf, hit the like button, hit the share button. We really appreciate it. We
Leave a
would like to
comment. Leave a
make a comment.
comment.
Thank you. And we'd like to keep you online here. We're doing our best to keep these client stories coming because they're actual real life things happening every day to people just like us. And so that's why we like to share them. So until next time, on behalf of Kim and I, cosmic hugs, everyone.
See ya. Bye.